Hi, I'm Mariella, and I'm a social scientist at Forest Research, which is the research agency of the Forestry Commission. I'm delighted to have been invited to talk to you today about some of the plant biosecurity work I'm involved with, and hopefully to get some of your help. So why am I here talking about plant biosecurity from a social perspective? Well, the diversity and volume of plants traded has consistently increased along with the speed at which you can get them. And this is hugely beneficial for our gardens and green spaces. And while trade represents a considerable economic and social value, it's also got a lot of high risk pathways. And this highlights the difficulty in finding the balance between the necessity to restrict the spread of pests and diseases, to protect our trees and our environment, whilst also not presenting barriers to free trade. But the potential negative impacts of plants bringing in pests and diseases are profound, including biodiversity loss, reductions in ecosystem functioning, losses in economic and social values, and the very values that we want to protect, and so on. And the motivations and behaviours of a wide range of spectrum of actors, from growers and traders to consumers, are likely to be key to any future attempts to improve plant biosecurity, such as preventative practices. So we're talking about surveillance or changing your trading and buying habits, or mitigation activities such as eradication and containment. And there's not a lot of social research that can tell us the basics about those who are implicated, impacted, or involved in plant health. I mean, it's improving, but we've still got a lot to learn. So I just want to introduce you briefly to what social scientists like me might be interested in. These are sorts of the questions that we think are essential to investigate for successful biosecurity management. And it involves a broad range of people that we want to talk to, from scientists and inspectors to nursery staff to landscapers, transport companies, and so on. And firstly, we want to talk about sort of stakeholder mapping. So by that we mean who is and should be involved, how and when. What do they know? What is the knowledge, and how does that influence behaviours? How does that different knowledges influence their actions? What is the social acceptability of different management options, and what are the values and attitudes of different individuals that influence their approach or their acceptability of these different management? And how can these responses be made more effective and appropriate? Economics. What are the monetary and non-monetary costs of pest damage and mitigating measures? Who pays? What are the policy issues influencing the governance of plant biosecurity, and who has a responsibility to act and when? And risk communication. We have lots and lots of information coming out, but is it actually having an impact? Does it change our ideas and our behaviours? And how can we evaluate the effectiveness of different engagement approaches in changing those behaviours? And I'm not going to talk about this slide very much. I just wanted to show you the breadth of some of the social research that we've done. I'm very happy to share this with you if you're interested. You've got my contact details at the beginning. But we've done a broad range of research, from landowner risk perceptions and the social acceptability of processionary moth control measures in central London, for example, through to understanding consumer plant purchasing behaviours and nursery best practice. So we've done a whole broad range, and we've published quite a bit, both in books, journal articles, and in short reports. And I'm just introducing this little project very briefly because it's relevant to what I want to talk to for the rest of this presentation. And this is the recent Phyto-threats project. You may have heard about it. Global threats from Phyto-threat species, a very interdisciplinary project. And our bit as social scientists was to understand what influences risky behaviours or attitudes along a plant supply chain, and understanding also whether an accreditation scheme could be an effective mechanism for improving biosecurity. And in this project, we looked at a generic accreditation scheme, not plant healthy, which Alistair Yeomans is going to talk about in this panel. But the sorts of research we did was we did interviews with nurseries to understand what the horticultural sector thinks of accreditation and which management practices they are most able and willing to change, or least able and willing to change. We also do surveys, such as one with a whole broad range of members of the public, a consumer survey, to understand what's driving their purchasing habits when they go to purchase plants, where they're purchasing their plants, what they consider to be the safest, such as garden centres and specialists, and riskiest sources of plants, such as non-specialists online, DIY, supermarkets, and whether this influences where they shop for plants. No, basically. So this is what I want to talk to you about today, and this is 3 projects focusing on biosecurity in Scotland, although it does have a broader reach. And this is the biggest challenge I think I personally have had to face to date. They're funded by the Plant Health Centre in Scotland and cover large-scale planting using sources that we in social sciences consider to be hard to reach. So that's your non-specialist and online horticultural sales. So we're talking again about the big supermarkets, the DIY stores, the lifestyle stores, and these large companies operate solely online. Large-scale planting for landscaping and infrastructure projects. We're talking about housing developments, roadworks, and large-scale tree planting for environmental benefits. So the massive woodland expansion targets, if you like, or habitat restoration or commercial planting. It started in March, well, really April. We've had to take it quite slow for obvious reasons. The people that we want to talk to have other things to consider at the moment, but we don't really have much time to catch up, and which is why I'm hoping to describe the projects to you today, tell you about what we want to do, and hopefully get your help. So just want to introduce you to the team. We cover social sciences, ecology, pathology, economics, modelling and landscape architecture. So we're a broad range of disciplines that are involved in this project. Again, I wanted to introduce you to the social scientists. So we're all from forest research, and we will be the ones that may be contacting you in the future. And I'm lucky enough to have a fantastic advisory panel who have an interest in what we're trying to do. So just to briefly introduce you to the plant health projects, what we always do at the beginning, as I said, is to try and do a bit of stakeholder mapping. So this is a review and update of the stakeholder databases we already have, because we have been working in plant health for the last couple of years. And we want to make sure that we have full coverage of all the sort of key stakeholders located in Scotland, but also, really importantly, all the organisations and businesses that are linked to those businesses in Scotland. So that will cover England, Wales, Ireland and beyond. We also want to include a spatial analysis to highlight potential high-risk areas, but also understand who the key decision makers are, currently in relation to, for example, procurement, recognising that there's going to be a bit of high turnover. So we're trying to find stable allies in companies that we can communicate with. And most importantly, we're doing this because we need to be careful in our research to avoid stakeholder fatigue. You know, we don't want to be approaching the same people in the same organisations asking the same questions. So I've been working really hard to coordinate amongst the researchers within this project, but also with other projects to make sure that we can make the best use of your time. So the first project is with non-specialist and online retailers. This is large scale. And the key aim here is to identify decision makers, their knowledge, their attitudes and behaviours in relation to plant health, and assess the opportunities and barriers to better plant biosecurity and the potential role of things like the Plant Healthy Scheme. So the questions that we want to ask is, what types and numbers of plants are being moved in and out of Scotland? And that includes the volume, the range, the types of suppliers we're really interested in, what the customer base is, and are there different supply chains and how do they work? What are the current levels of biosecurity knowledge and what influences management practices? So what do people know? And what are the influences in terms of what are the procurement policies? And does cost play a role? Does the reputation of supplier matter? What is the consumer demand, and is this important? Again, we want to know what are the perceived risks of current practices alongside the actual risks. So that in terms of what are the perceived risks of plant selection? What are the perceived risks of different suppliers? How are you quarantining? Is there waste disposal, and all those sorts of questions, and ultimately want to know who the relevant individuals, organisations and industry partners are responsible for the biosecurity responsibility. Where are they responsible? How are they responsible, and when? And do they know about this? Are they aware of this? And these are the sorts of questions that we're hoping to ask non-specialists and online retailers. And I thought I'd give you a little sense of the sort of methods that we're hoping to use. So, as I said earlier, we're doing a rapid review and synthesis of existing data sets. We do not want to recreate the wheel, so we're trying to understand what's already out there. Actually, in relation to these 3 projects, not very much from the social perspective. So we're hoping to do a survey of online retailers relevant to Scotland, or retailers who also sell online, to assess the types of volumes of plants, again, that awareness, what the consumer demand is and what the appetite is for accreditation. But we also want to do semi-structured interviews with large retailers. And we will be including nurseries in this because of their knowledge and experience of the non-traditional retailers of plants. So we want to have a sort of broad range of actors to be able to talk to. So the second project, here we're hoping to work with business contacts in the landscape and construction sector. We've had more success in the past talking to landscape architects and garden designers, less success in being able to talk to landscape contractors, very difficult and hard to reach sector. And this will be the first time we've included construction, housing developers and others involved in major infrastructure projects. And we hope to fill the knowledge gaps and hold those responsible for selecting, procuring and planting on a large scale. How does it work? What happens in-house? What gets contracted out? How many contractors? And how do you ensure that good biosecurity is being followed throughout? And we're looking at projects associated with transport networks, local authority developments, residential developments and other commercial companies. And we're taking quite a nice approach. The aim is to map the key players through the public planning portal. We can have a look at many different projects and try and select some. And try and follow up with a short survey interview to identify the prominent drivers and challenges associated with the scale of those developments, including species choice and size, procurement processes, selection of suppliers, volumes and costs, survival establishment rates and replacement costs, and of course biosecurity awareness. So the key here will be in relation to trying to track from planning to planting all the key players that are being involved. We also want to do a detailed picture of decision making in relation to the landscaping components from start to finish, and the case studies have not been selected, but we're almost there. We've got another added value with this project in that we're working with risk modelers, and recent models have shown that the arrival and spread of plant pests and diseases depends on connectivity in the plant trade and climate suitability as well of the pest species. But that coordination and engagement in biosecurity can stop and slow this. So we're going to look at whether the risk models incorporating trade network information can help us understand where the key risks are and inform decision making on biosecurity. We probably won't be able to do focus groups in person, but we're hoping to set some up virtually. So if you're interested, please let me know. And the final project is on the environment. So this is your woodland creation expansion and your habitat restoration and regeneration. And we're really interested in understanding the attitudes and the values and decision making of sort of the major players and decision makers in this. And given the massive tree planting targets and rewilding or habitat restoration concerns, there's a real need to increase or implement good biosecurity. An example is, where is the plant stock coming from if it's not locally sourced because of lack of stock? So how are the decisions being made around this? And decisions now is going to affect our future landscapes, our agriculture, our biodiversity, our ecosystem services, our livelihoods and our recreation. So it's really, really important. And the aim of this project is to improve our understanding of the current biosecurity knowledge and practice in the environment and conservation sector. So what are the biosecurity risks from planning to planting? What are the major drivers and trade-offs informing location, species, procurement, forecasts? And what are the opportunities for implementing lessons learned and promoting good biosecurity here? With this project, we're mostly going to be taking a case study approach, and we're looking for case studies that span historic, so large-scale environmental planning, particularly ones that got hit by pests and diseases, so we can see where the lessons can be learned. We're interested in current large-scale planting schemes, so ones that are ongoing and therefore easy to map the decision making. And we want to cover a whole broad range of actors, including funders, planners, architects, committees, nurseries, traders, contractors, volunteers, and so on. And then future plan schemes or where lessons learned could be potentially applied. And within these three temporal scales, we have highlighted three potentially high risky areas: restoration planting of existing vulnerable habitats, new planting for native or habitat woodland creation, and commercial planting. And with the modelling, we also want to use the risk models to potentially inform location, species, and source of plants. So again, looking at how those risk models can help with the decision making. So those are the three projects. We're at early stages. I have discussed with the team that I can present some results if we manage to get some later on in the autumn. But here I'm asking for your help. I can promise that we will not be a major burden on your time, but your help in providing knowledge about how your business or your membership is tackling biosecurity will help us influence policy going forward and provide positive outcomes for growers and the sector. The sorts of questions I'm wanting to ask is, would you be willing to participate in the project? Are you connected? Do you have connections with non-specialist retailers, supermarkets, DIYs? Can you help us get connected? Are you an online retailer? Do you know of any online retailers that we can approach? Can you connect us there? Do you have contacts in the building industry or have experienced contacts for any major infrastructure or housing projects that have a landscaping element? We're really interested to know what you know. But also, what would you like to know? What questions could we ask for you that would help you improve biosecurity practices? We've put a little short survey in there. There's only 4 questions. They're very, very simple, and it's just a way of you being able to contact us, seeing as this is a webinar and not in person. So I really, really hope that you're able to complete this little survey, and I'm excited about hearing from you. Thank you.